that on Monday we were talking about the cosmocentric, anthropocentric, and the historical approach to the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah. And what I want to do today is to try from the same perspective to read with you the kriot, the reading of the Torah and the haftarot, reading from the prophets of Rosh Hashanah. There are 2 days for Rosh Hashanah, so there are 2 readings and 2 haftarot, and they're very important and very interesting. What I want to do is to try to read them and arise, to observe them and try to arise from them the meaning of every parasha for itself and all of them together. Now, it's long chapters of the Bible, but what we can do, we can read them in their specific context. But what's interesting here is the choice of the sages to integrate them into the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah. And that's an interpretive choice. It's a choice to understand them in a liturgy context and to try to infuse them with meaning, to infuse Rosh Hashanah with a meaning by them. Whoever is praying in shul is not passive. We can't just sit there, you know, and hear the chazan singing and he's going to do the job for us. We can't. If we're praying in shul, we have an active role. We need to be commentators. We need to create Midrash, to find the lesson. And so we can't be passive. We have to be active. And we can do it in the tefillah, in the prayer itself, to try to understand the words and the meaning of whoever put them in the siddur. We can try to see, to understand the meaning of the editors that put this prayer before this one and made a stop between one and the other. But I think that what that is most interesting to do is to try to find the connection of the reading of the Torah to the holiday, to the festival. It's interesting always to do, to try to find the connection between the Kri'ah and the Haftarah, okay? The section from the Torah and from the prophets. But especially in Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or Sukkot, it's interesting to try to understand what the sages that chose these readings wanted us to learn, wanted us, in what mood they wanted us to be. So let's just make a short exercise. If you were you were asked to suggest reading for Rosh Hashanah, what would you choose? Can you write in the chat? What chapter from the Bible would you choose to read on Rosh Hashanah? I'm just going to say till you're writing that if you want to see the sources, you have them on the website of Altogether now. In the session, under my picture, there are the presentation with all the sources. I'm going to load them up, but you can also look them by yourself. Okay, so a lot of people are saying Bereshit 1, Genesis 1, okay, creation of the world. Very good idea, I think. Creation story of Bereshit. Bereshit Aleph, okay, everyone thinks the same thing. Any other idea? The parasha of chapter 23 of Vayikra dealing with Yom Teruah, okay, so to talk about Rosh Hashanah, good idea. Section on holidays, so Rosh Hashanah and the other. Exodus based on Nisan text. Creation, but the whole world does not celebrate Rosh Hashanah, so we need something specifically Jewish. Leviticus 19, Vayikra 23, which is also about the holidays. Okay, thank you. Very interesting. And I see most of the people suggested Bereshit, which is, I think, a very logical here. I see Bereshit Perek 2, okay, chapter 2. So it's maybe 1 and 2. We have time. Rosh Hashanah is a long prayer. So Noach, okay, Noach. We also mention Noach with Abraham and Yitzchak in that tefillah, in the prayer. So we have a lot of ideas, but I think I would add, I think Bereshit is a very, very good idea, especially if we see really the idea of the creation that was in Rosh Hashanah, as we saw last time. Maybe the story of Gan Eden, the sin and the punishment, maybe that would encourage us to tshuva, to repentance. Maybe the 10 Commandments, so whoever sinned will decide to improve one's ways. And if you want to improve your ways, you need to know what to do. So maybe 10 Commandments, maybe something about reward and punishment, something about the holiday, as you suggested. Maybe if I want punishment and reward, maybe I can read the curses and the blessings on the Mount of Eival and Mount Grizim. Maybe even the second parasha of Shema, V'haya im Shamoah, right? If then you obey the commandments that I enjoin upon you this day, I will grant the rain for your land, etc. The blessing before and after the Shema, exactly, Sarah and I said it together. So we have a lot of Yaakov wrestling in Genesis 32. We have a lot of ideas that I think a lot of good ideas. I'm not going to say now what I think. I'll say it later. And Chazal, the sages, didn't choose any one of them, which is very surprising. Surprisingly, what they chose is exciting, very personal narratives about 4 parents, 4 characters that are all parents who are yearning for a child. Sarah, okay, that wants yearning for a child. Hannah, that is yearning for a child. Avraham, that Akedat Yitzchak, yearn for a child, and then there is the Akedah. And Yirmiyahu, 31, which is Rachel crying for her sons that went to exile and waiting for them to come back. All of them about children, about yearning for children, about losing children. And I want us to read it together and try to think, what's the reason? What's the message? What can we learn from this surprising choice that doesn't work with what all of us suggested and all of us thought? So I'm going to put the screen. And we're not going to read everything, but we're going to try to read some of the verses in each one of the readings and the haftarot. So I have Rabbi David Weiss to help me read, so thank you. And if you can please start with the beginning of the reading of the first day from Genesis 21.
So all I have is it's not advanced.
You can't see it?
No, I just see a coin.
You just have to move it to page 2 of your
Yeah, I'll share it again. Is that better?
Okay.
Okay.
בעברית או אנגלית?
I think English.
Okay. The Lord took note of Sarah as he had promised, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age. At the set time of which God had spoken, Abraham gave his newborn son, whom Sarah had borne him, the name Isaac. And when his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would suckle children? Yet I have borne a son in his old age. The child grew up and was weaned, and Abraham held a great fast on the day that Isaac was weaned. Sarah saw the son whom Hagar, the Egyptian, had borne to Abraham playing. She said to Abraham, Cast out that slave woman and her son, for the son of that slave shall not share in the inheritance with my son Isaac. The matter distressed Abraham greatly, for it concerned a son of his. But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed over the boy or your slave. Whatever Sarah tells you, do as she says, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be continued for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him too, for he is your seed. Early next morning, Abraham took some bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He placed them over her shoulder together with the child, and she went away. And she wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba.
Thank you. Maybe two more psukim.
When the water was gone from the skin, she left the child under the bushes and went and sat down at a distance, a bow shot ahead, for she thought, let me not look upon the child as the child dies. And sitting thus afar, she burst into tears. God heard the cry of the boy, and an angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, okay,
thank you. So it's, of course, it's very, it's interesting to read, and it's a story, and we're into it, and it's touching. So it's difficult to stop in the middle, but we know that there was a happy end. Okay, God heard Ishmael and saved him. So in the first day of Rosh Hashanah, what we read is about the birth of Yitzchak, his circumcision, the beginning of his maturation, okay, Vayigamel. Sarah was infertile, was a barren for years, for many, many years. And we know that Abraham and Sarah yearned for a boy of their own for many years. And in their old age, we don't know what happened. Maybe they made peace with their fate and with the situation, with their life. Maybe they went on feeling sorry and grieving for whatever they never experienced. But for sure, they didn't believe that there's still gonna come a common child for both of them. Now we have to remember, Abraham had a child, Ishmael. Probably when Ishmael was born, Abraham believed that the promise of the seed and the promise of the land are fulfilling in Ishmael. God promised him a son, and a son was born, and he raised a son, Ishmael. And probably every step that Ishmael took, he knew that this is the promise fulfilling. This is what he believed that will come. And when he's promised of another child, of Yitzchak, he doesn't believe it. But the parasha doesn't end there. As we read, and thank you, Rabbi David, the parasha goes on, and we read the deportation of Hagar and Ishmael to the desert, according to what Sarah is asking. In Hebrew, yes, we'll do both. Thank you. And Abraham is sorry. I'm going to show again the psukim. Look here on verse 11. וירא הדבר מאוד בעיני אברהם על אודות בנו. Abraham, the matter distressed Abraham greatly, for it concerned a son of his. His son is Ishmael. The son that he loves is Ishmael. And he doesn't like the idea that the new son is pushing the old one, the loved one. Al yira be'enecha, God says, Al yira be'enecha al hana'ar. Everything Sarah is telling you, you should do. Sarah wants to free the way for her coming son, but Abraham already lost one son, and in the next chapter, he's going to lose another. Later, he's going to also deport the sons of the Pilagshim, okay? And he's going to stay alone with no son. But now when he's being told to give up his son, to deport him, and someone else will come in his place, that's the first Akedah, the Akedah of Ishmael. And then we meet Hagar crying about her son, Hagar that falls into tears and doesn't know what will happen. So as we can see, there's also an end of the story about the alliance between Avimelech, the king of Gog, and Abraham, and the Eshel planted by Abraham in Beersheba. We're not going to read this. But we can see that again and again, we talk about parents that are losing children. Hagar is almost losing her son. Abraham is losing his son. Abraham and Sarah are yearning for a son. In the end, he comes. This is a story of the first day. If I'm going on to the Haftarah, okay, just look at the pictures. This is Sarah, okay, a picture of Sarah with a baby. And in the beginning, the coin that I showed you is a coin that in Israel, there is a whole factory of medals, and they are celebrating like special events by conducting medals. So this is a medal for Sarah, Uverachti ota, and I'm gonna bless her. And as you can see, Sarah is holding a baby in her arms. So again, the character of Sarah is the barren Sarah, and then the happy Sarah that has a child. As of course, she has other attributes, and she has a lot other things that she's doing. But again and again, we remember Sarah as the mother, okay, mother, ancestor, mother of all of us, but a mother with a child, yearning for a child, and then accepting a child, and then almost losing a child, dying while thinking, according to the Midrash, while thinking she's going to lose her child. The Haftarah at the same day, after we're into tears, okay? It's not, if we listened to the Kriya of Rosh Hashanah, we're not sure we can go on to another story like this. But if we stay in shul and we're listening, the Haftarah is even more difficult. Okay, let's just read the beginning. David?
There was a man from Ramathaim of the Zuphites in the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroboam, the son of Elihu, son of Tobu, son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had two wives. Is
important. We're going to meet it again and again. Okay, Ephraim is also a symbol from Israel later in the prophecy.
He had two wives, one named Hannah and the other named Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah was childless. This man used to go up from his town every year to worship and to offer sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh. Hophni and Pinchas, the two sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord there. One such day, Elkanah offered a sacrifice. He used to give portions to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters, but to Hannah he would give one portion only, though Hannah was his favorite, and the Lord had closed her womb. Moreover, her rival, to make her miserable, would taunt her that the Lord had closed up her womb. This happened year after year. Every time she went up to the house of the Lord, the other would taunt her so that she wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah said to her, Hannah, why are you crying and why aren't you eating? Why are you so sad? Am I not more devoted to you than 10 sons? After they had eaten and drank at Shiloh, Hannah rose. The priest Eli was sitting on the seat near the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. In her wretchedness, she prayed to the Lord, weeping all the while. And she made this vow, O Lord of hosts, if you will look upon the suffering of your maidservant and will remember me and not forget your maidservant, and if you will grant your maidservant a male child, I will dedicate him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor shall ever touch his head. As she kept on praying before the Lord, Eli watched her mouth. Now Hannah was praying in her heart. Only her lips moved, but her voice could not be heard. So Eli thought she was drunk. Eli said to her, "How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself? Sober up."
Let's read one more pasuk.
And Hannah replied, "Oh no, my lord, I am a very unhappy woman. I have drunk no wine or other strong drink, but I have been pouring out my heart to the Lord."
Okay, and then thank you. And then Eli promises her that whatever she was asking for will happen, and she is receiving Shmuel, her son, and as she promised, she's dedicating him to God. So we meet again the barren. We meet Hannah that is yearning for children. We meet the difficult relationship between Hannah and Pnina, the envy between them. One envies the other that the husband loves her. One envies the other that she has children, as we know the story from Rachel and Leah. And we see that he loves her. We see that he cuddles her. We see that he tries to help her. But the verse that is saying that what he says to her, "Lama tivki," I'm on verse 8, "Velama lo tuchli, velama yera levavecha lo anochi tov lach me'asara banim." I'm better than 10 sons. Of course, he didn't understand her yearning. He didn't understand her wishes. He had children of his own. And he's saying, I'm better than 10 sons. One of the very interesting interpreters for this, called the Akedat Yitzchak, according to his book, is explaining, Rabbi Yitzchak Rama, 14th century, he's explaining that the reason that he was angry is that he's like blaming her for thinking that she's only for bearing children, that women are only for bearing children, and that she doesn't have a personality of her own, and that she says that I prefer to die, okay, and if I can't have children. So that's why he's angry. But here we meet Hannah crying. We meet Hannah very sad. We meet her vowing that she's not an egoistic way of wanting children for her heritage or to leave something after her, to have a continuation to her life. No, she's saying, I'm going to get the child, I'm going to give him up. I'm going to dedicate him to God. You're going to get him. It's not an egoistic wish. And she's getting her wish. On the second chapter, and then she has a big, like a poem, a song of gratitude in Perek Bet that we're not going to read in the second chapter, okay? And she's saying, she's receiving the boy, and she's saying this exactly. If you see on 27, for this, it was this boy I prayed for, and the Lord has granted me what I ask of him. He's born, and she's saying, yes, exactly this is what I wanted. Thanks for him. Like she's looking at him and saying, this is exactly what I wanted. And there is a song of gratitude, very beautiful. In chapter 2, there's going to be a very touching moment when she's sewing him a little coat and sending this coat to Shiloh, to the temple, to Eli, in order for him to be warm. But not only to be warm, I'm imagining her thinking that maybe the sleeves of this coat that she saw will hug him instead of her, because she's far away and she's only visiting once a year. The Gemara learned from Hannah. Hannah got her wish, not because she was crying. She got her wish because of her deeds, because of her promise, according to Chazal, according to the sages. And in Brachot tractate, Rav Amnuna is saying, "Kama hilchata gavra ravata ikale mishma mehane ikrai dechana." How many significant halachot can be derived from these verses of the prayer of Hannah? So many halachot are being learned from Hannah. Hannah and David, the King David and Hannah are the two people that the prayer, the halachot of the prayer, the laws of the prayer are being learned from. And he's quoting Rav Amnuna, the verses that Hannah is saying about herself, the very personal moment of the vow, the very personal moment of her crying and Eli coming and looking at her and trying to understand what's going on. And from this situation, intimate, private situation, we're learning halachot of tefillah for all of us. Rabbi David, can you read a few, the 4 halachot? From the 3rd line.
From the 3rd line, and from that which is stated here, only her lips moved. The halacha that one who prays must enunciate the words with his lips, not only contemplate them in his heart, is derived. And from what is written here, and her voice could not be heard, the halacha that one is forbidden to raise his voice in his Amidah prayer as it must be recited silently. From the continuation of the verse here, so Eli thought her to be drunk. The halacha that a drunk person is forbidden to pray, that is why he rebuked her.
Thank you. And these are only 4 examples, because after Rav Amnuna is saying this, so that there are a few pages of Talmud that is talking about different things that we can learn from Hannah. One of the most important, one of the most interesting things that we learn from Hannah is that she has a lot of courage. When she was standing in front of God, she believed that she can talk to him. She believed that, that he looks at her and listens to her heart. And she's saying to God, you promised me a son, and you're not giving it to me. And I want a son. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to read in your Torah. And I see in your Torah Parashat Sotah. Sotah is a woman that is being suspected as committing adultery. And then she's going to the Kohen in those days, and there is a whole ceremony that they're doing in order to prove her innocence or to see that she is to blame. But Hannah is saying, I read in your Torah, and I know that if I'm going to hide and I'll be from my husband with someone, and I'll be suspected as Isha Sotah, and then it will be found out that I'm innocent, you promised a prize, a son, a pregnancy. So you know what I'm going to do? I'll do this. And then you will have to give me the prize. I read in your Torah. Okay? So there is a protest, and there is intelligence, and there is knowledge of her, of the Torah, and how she can use it in a provocative way, but in a very useful way. How she can use it for herself. And the sages are talking about Hannah as a very, very special character in her tefillah that was answered. Okay, she didn't have to do the whole thing that she was threatening to do, but she was answered, and she got Shmuel, and then she dedicated him to the temple and to God. But again, my question is, why do we read it in Rosh Hashanah? We saw the Midrashim 2 days ago, that the Midrashim are saying that Hannah her cry was answered in Rosh Hashanah, and that Sarah, her cry was answered in Rosh Hashanah. But this looks like a justification of Chazal for the readings of Rosh Hashanah. Okay, it looks like we know that we're reading the story of Hannah and the story of Sarah on Rosh Hashanah. We ask ourselves why, so we explain that this is what, that it happened that day. But that's not enough. Why do we read it in Rosh Hashanah? Why do we need these stories? Why not Genesis 1? Why not Leviticus 23? Okay, what is so special about these intimate, private narratives that are being read on Rosh Hashanah? And it doesn't end here, because there is another day to Rosh Hashanah. And in the second day, okay, we read the Kedat Yitzchak, the binding of Yitzchak. We're just going to read part of it because I'm sure you know it and you learned it so many times. And now we're just going to read in order to ask the question, okay? We're just going to read part of it. Yeah? Akedat Yitzchak, you know, there is a lot of art dedicated to Akedat Yitzchak, and the artists that are fascinating by the story and trying to explain the story by using pictures. One example here is Abel Pan from the 20th century, that he has a whole series of art from the Bible, and there is a beautiful website that shows everything. But look at this picture. If we try to understand the relationship between Abraham and Yitzchak, according to this picture, he's saying goodbye, he's kissing him, he's loving him, he's hugging him, he's very, very sorry for what he needs to do from what God told him to do. Other pictures are looking at it in a different way. Look at this picture on the left of Paolo Veronese. He's Italian from the Renaissance. That look at the knife in the hand of Abraham that the angel needs to hold his hand in order to stop him. He's such in a religious ecstasy and about to sacrifice Yitzchak, that the angel needs to hold his hand in order to make him listen to him and say enough. And another artist called Shraga Weil, who is Israeli from the beginning of the 20th century, he has a few pictures about Akedat Yitzchak. One of the most interesting for me was this one. If you can see, Abraham is lying down. He's like in the bottom of the picture, and he's like hugging himself, and you see he's suffering. He doesn't know what to do. He's turning from side to side, and what you can see is all the letters of the Torah that are falling on him from sky. And in the letters, we can see, Kachna et bincha et yechidcha asher ahavta et Yitzchak, okay, the commandment to sacrifice Yitzchak. And we can see the colors, the blue colors are supposed to be heavenly. And him here crying here and suffering and trying to, get into himself and to run away by sleeping, like Jonah, from everything that is in reality outside here. And we see all the letters, like in Kabbalistic ideas, that the letters of the Torah are coming out of the Torah and being, they are independent. And here, Abraham is attacked by all these letters and by the request of God to sacrifice his son. So when we go into Akedat Yitzchak, we're not going to talk about the whole story, but I just want to see the motive that I showed in Bereshit Kaf Aleph, in Genesis 21, and in Shmuel Aleph, in the story of Hannah, to show it also in Akedat Yitzchak. Let's just read the beginning in order to remind us. Rabbi David, please.
Sometime afterward, God put Abraham to the test. He said to him, Abraham, and he answered, Here I am. And he said, Take your son, your favored one, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the heights that I will point out to you. So early the next morning, Abraham saddled his ass and took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. He split the wood for the burnt offering, and he set out for the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his servants, You stay here with the ass. The boy and I will go up there, and we will worship, and we will return to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and put it on his son Isaac. He himself took the firestone and the knife, and the 2 walked off together.
The 2 walked off together. There's a lot of commentaries on this pasuk. וילכו שניהם יחדיו, they walk together. And the understanding of it is not only they walked together physically, but they walked together mentally. They walked together, they agreed. And we can pull it to either side. Or they walked together like Abraham was dedicated, also Yitzchak was dedicated, or they walked together like Yitzchak went without a suspect, also without suspecting, without being suspicious. Also Abraham wasn't suspicious, and he knew that it's going to be fine. There was a request to read in Hebrew, so I'm going to, or if you want,
בבקשה, אני יכול.
Please.
מההתחלה?
No, just from here.
ויאמר יצחק אל אברהם אביו, ויאמר אבי, ויאמר הנני בני, ויאמר הנה האש והעצים, ויהי הסה לעולה. ויאמר אברהם אלוהים יראה לו הסה לעולה בני, וילכו שניהם יחדיו. ויבוא אל המקום אשר אמר לו האלוהים, ויבן שם אברהם את המזבח, ויערוך את העצים ויעקוד את יצחק בנו, וישם אותו על המזבח ממעל העצים. וישלח אברהם את ידו, ויקח את המאכלת לשחוט את בנו. ויקרא אליו מלאך אדוני מן השמיים, ויאמר אברהם, אברהם, ויאמר הנני. ויאמר אל תשלח ידך על הנער, ואל תעש לו מאומה, כי אתה ידעתי כי ירא אלוהים אתה. ולא חסכת את בנך, את יחידך ממנו.
Okay, thank you. Again, we're talking about a very, very delicate situation between a father, a parent, and a child. We're talking about almost losing a child. And I'm not talking now about the test of belief. Okay, of course, we can learn Akedat Yitzchak for a whole year. We're not going to do it now, but I want to focus on the idea of a father and a son, a father that was yearning for a son. He got a son when he was 100 years old. Okay, he had Ishmael, as we said before, but now there is Yitzchak. And he needs to sacrifice him. And of course, we can ask about sacrificing. And did Abraham really do what he was supposed to? Did he succeed in the test? Because there are explanations that he didn't succeed, that he should have said no, okay, to God. Of course, it's not the pshat. But trying to understand in a moral way that maybe he failed because he had to say no, and that's why Abraham and Yitzchak don't meet each other. There's a post-trauma to Yitzchak, and they don't meet each other from this point to the end of till Abraham dies, until the end of their days. But I'm looking at relationship between a father and a son that he almost loses him. And there is a very intimate moment between them, and they're walking together. Now, why to read it on Rosh Hashanah? Here there is a reason. Here we can understand, and God never talks to him again either. Nachon. Thank you, Andrea. So here my question is a little less deep, because I know why we're reading Akedat Yitzchak on this day. First of all, maybe we want to deepen faith and obedience. But second, the shofar. Okay, the shofar is done from the reindeer's beam. Okay, so the shofar from the ayil. Okay, so and we're blowing on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Zichron Teruah. So it is an option to understand why we are reading Akedat Yitzchak. And except for that, Akedat Yitzchak is mentioning to God the ancestral merit, okay, the paternal merit. When we're in front of God, we don't want to mention our sin from Bereshit. What we want to mention is Abraham obeying God, and he had such a big how do you call it? Like in a bank when you have a lot of money, and it's in the bank so you can use it. Credit, right, thank you. So he has such a big credit, okay, that we can use his credit. That's zchut avot, okay? The paternal merit that we can use, and we're mentioning again and again to God. When we will stand in front of the judge, in front of judgment, we only want to mention what can help us. So the Akedah, I understand it, but still, it's not as good as other chapters that we mentioned before. The last part, the Haftarah, and then I'm going to open it to comments and questions before I am giving my answer. So the Haftarah of the second day is the prophecy of condolence of Jeremiah, of consolation. And it's mentioning Rachel, which is a symbol for Zion, for the people of Israel, that is crying for her sons to come back. Let's just read again the beginning of that. Okay, the beginning of the Haftarah. Maybe you can read the first passage, and then we'll go to the next page and read a few other psukim.
Thus said the Lord, the people escaped from the sword, found favor in the wilderness. When Israel was marching homeward, the Lord revealed himself to me of old. Eternal love I conceived for you then. Therefore I continue my grace to you. I will build your family again, O maiden Israel. Again you shall take up your timbrels and go forth to the rhythm of the dancers. Again you shall plant vineyards on the hills of Samaria. Men shall plant and live to enjoy them. For the day is coming when watchmen shall proclaim on the heights of the Ephraim, come, let us go up to Zion, to the Lord our God.
A very optimistic prophecy. The verse chet, I'm going to relate to it later, בבכי יבואו ותחנונים הובילם, הוליכם אל נחלי מים בדרך ישר לא ייכשלו בה, כי הייתי לישראל לאב ואפרים בכורי הוא. From I'm ever a father to Israel, Ephraim is my firstborn. Can you please read from 14?
Thus said the Lord, a cry is heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children who are gone. Thus said the Lord, restrain your voice from weeping, your eyes from shedding tears, for there is a reward for your labor, declares the Lord. They shall return from the enemy's land, and there is hope for the future, declares the Lord. Your children shall return to their country. I can hear Ephraim lamenting. You have chastised me, and I am chastised like a calf that has not been broken. Receive me back. Let me return, for you, O Lord, are my God. Now that I have turned back, I am filled with remorse. Now that I am made aware, I strike my thigh. I am ashamed and humiliated, for I bear the disgrace of my youth. Truly,
the last one in Hebrew, because maybe it's known familiar from the Tefillah.
Yata ben yakir li, Ephraim im yalad she'ushaim, ki midei dvari, debri bo zachar eskrenu, od al ken hamu ma'i lo vachem acharemena menu neum Adonai.
Thank you. Toda rabba. Okay, so as we can see, I'm just going to close. Okay, as we can see, also the second haftarah, the haftarah of the second day, it's not talking about, it's not only talking about a specific character, it is talking about Rachel crying for her kids that are not coming back from exile, and she wants them to come back, but it's also a symbol of Zion, a symbol of Israel, of that land of Israel, of Jerusalem, that is crying for her sons to come back to her, and the Midrashim are, of course, using these psukim every time to what fits that time, to exile that time again and again. But we can see that God is the father of Israel, and that Rachel is the mother of her sons that are not there. A very touching moment between a parent and a child. We know that Rachel was waiting for so long for her sons, because Leah had sons, like Hannah and Penina. Leah had sons, she had Yaakov. Okay, but now she's crying. She had sons, but then Yosef and Binyamin, okay, are not there anymore. The others are not there anymore, and she's crying for them, and she's asking God to let them come back. Why do we read all these stories, all these similar stories on Rosh Hashanah? Any ideas? Yes, Salah.
So I have taken so many classes in the last 3 weeks, I can't remember from where I learned what, but there was a discussion about the divine punishment of Karaite, being cut off. And it's not meted by the rabbis, it's only meted out by God. And how do you know you've been subjected to it? One of the signs is barrenness, no children. So in this period of judgment, when we might be cut off from our people as a punishment, we read about people for whom that happened.
Very interesting. So it's like the private karet symbolizes the karet in general, and it's also a threat or a warning for us to make tshuva. Thanks, Sarah. Any other ideas?
Can I also wrote in the comment, I just was thinking of the connection with the class on Monday and Hayom Harat Olam, and saying Rachem Avabanim.
Rachem Rachamenu Neum Hashem, like Rachem Aval Banim, נכון? Okay, so you're saying, but say another sentence. Okay, so it's Rachem Aval Banim and?
Well, I haven't thought it through, but perhaps the Torah reading and the Haftorah readings are modeling what we're hoping our relationship with God could be or will be. Perhaps that we're here in Tefillah. I thought it was also very powerful that we learned Tefillah from Chana, which is what Rosh Hashanah to a large degree is about, but also that we're looking for the relationship of Banim to their Av to be repaired on this day. And that's the theme, or one of the themes of all the Torah and Haftorah readings.
Interesting. Toda. Robert?
I think the Rachel poem that's put in song by Achinoam Nini helps me understand these parshiot. So she ends the song, Od et mamer ke Rachel, Od et palel ke Chana b'Shilo. So the bitterness, bottle of bitterness is Rachel, and she has a personal experience, and so she expresses bitterness through Rachel. But prayer is advancing beyond that. Hannah also felt bitterness, but it was a bitterness towards Shiloh. It was a bitterness towards the culture of Sefer Shoftim. And so her bitterness is turned into something that's other-oriented. And so the fact that she could turn it into prayer and become other-oriented, it seems to me is a perfect expression of what we should be experiencing in Malchuyot. And so I think that the stories relate to, us feeling as servants, right? The same idea of Hayom Harat Olam, this feeling of servants, but how should we feel as servants? We should feel as servants not just a sense of bitterness, but a bitterness to go and do real tshuva.
Okay. Toda. Tova?
Thank you. It might be very far off, but I look at Rosh Hashanah as an individual kind of a holiday, part of a Keilah, of course, but in comparison to Pesach, 6 months apart, the first mitzvah on Pesach is Veigadet Levincha, saying that whatever you do, you have to transmit the heritage as a kehillah. And on a personal level, whatever and however we conduct ourselves, we as a children of God, imitatio Dei, in the light of God, Kdoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani, and being a model to our children on a personal level, so they will learn to be belev echad ubenefesh echad, even though they might choose a different affiliation in terms of to which Beit Knesset they are going and from which Siddur they are praying, they will have that kind of binding of continuity.
Toda, thank you. Very interesting. I'll read a few comments from the chat, and then I'm going to suggest an idea. So Donna is writing that in the child, God gives mankind a chance for forgiveness. And Eva is writing that our relationship as children of God, we're sure that God receives us even when we go astray. Richard is writing that the mystic message of Genesis 21 is the Jews exist only because God calls them into existence. Everyone else begats. Replayed through Bereshit, every time the story of the Jews is about to end, God intervenes to keep the story going. So again, we have continuation from other ways. And we do have, as a lot of you said, a comparison where we're thinking that what God is doing and what we're doing is similar. What I want to suggest is, following what you said, is the idea of Professor Schweid that wrote, there is a book, probably it's translated to English, it's called Sefer Machzor HaZmanim, the book of the cycle of the holy days, in translation that I'm making now, probably it's translated. A very beautiful book about all the holy days. Michal, if you can find the link and put it in the chat, it's going to be wonderful, of the name. And what he's suggesting is that we have to look at Rosh Hashanah, because we know that Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment, not only of the world, but also in a very personal context. So if we would take stories like Gan Eden, or like creation in Genesis 1, what we will be, that's going to be intellectual learning. That's going to be a session. You want to go learn about Rosh Hashanah? Go learn creation. Go learn 10 Commandments. Go learn Leviticus 23. But when we are in the synagogue, when we're praying, we're in a different mood. The prayer is talking to our soul and not to our mind. By reading these stories, feeling these emotions, identifying with the characters, with the feeling that we have as people who pray, we feel that our fate is being decided these minutes. We feel that the continuation of the generations might be in danger. It's hang on the mercy of God. Like the barren mothers that are waiting for a divine sign, like Abraham that is waiting for the angel to save him from himself. The prayer is not studying, it's not rational. It's experience of emotional and mental events that are happening while sitting in shul, while experiencing what's going on. If we were in a session, okay, in a learning time, we would read something else. We would choose things like creation of man, creation of the world, sin and a punishment, reward and punishment. But we are in synagogue, we're praying. And the man or the woman that are praying needs to see themselves as in court in front of God. Whatever that is said needs to create in my feelings, in my heart, the fear, maybe the feel of being controlled, by God, a feeling and a thought that is fit to this moment. I don't need to think about punishment. I need to feel that I am, I'm trying to find the right word, that he can decide my fate, that he's deciding about my future.
Dependent.
That I'm yearning. What?
Dependent on God.
Dependent, thank you. I'm dependent on God. I'm yearning for a child as I'm yearning for God. And these are chapters that are explaining exactly what they're putting me in the right atmosphere, putting me in the right thinking and feeling that I'm supposed to be as a person dependent on God. Now, if I'm thinking, I'm going another step, look at the development of this stories. Sarah is asking for a son and accepting a son. Hannah is asking for a son, accepting a son. Okay, that's the haftarah of the first day. And then she is dedicating to God. She's giving him to someone else temporarily. Abraham is asking for a son. Now we're in the second day, accepting a son, giving up his son for God. Not temporarily, eternally. Or at least this is what he's supposed to be willing to do, even though it's a test, but in order to pass the test. Rachel is crying for the sons that were already taken from her, and she wants them back. These are 4 different ways of prayer. There is a prayer of request. There is a prayer of thanks, of Hannah. There is a prayer of sacrifice. We know that prayers comes from sacrifice, that sacrifices comes from prayers. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot says that 2 options, how to understand where did the times of prayers came from. One option is from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, from our ancestors. One option is Avraham went out in the morning, Vayashkem Avraham baboker. Okay, so that's Tfilat Shacharit. Yitzchak went to the field at noon, Vayetze Yitzchak lasuch basadeh le'et erev, that's Mincha. Yaakov lay down in the evening and dreamt about the letter, so Ad bo shemesh, so Yaakov invented Arvit. That's one option. And if we understand prayer as came from the ancestors, so it's a very personal prayer. It's very spontaneous. But another option is to understand the prayers according to sacrifices. Shacharit is because of the sacrifice of the morning. Mincha is because of the sacrifices of the afternoon. And Arvit is, there's no sacrifice of evening, but there are parts of the sacrifice that are burning on the Mizbeach in the all night, so that's the time of Arvit. Of course, if we're talking about sacrifices, it's formal. Okay, there are times and there are places and there are specific people that can do it. It's very different. Okay, it's different kinds of prayer, but we do understand prayer as replacing sacrifices after the destruction of the temple. So we have, someone has his microphone on, so if you can please turn it off. Michal, maybe you can find whoever is on. Thank you. So, so there is a praying of request, there is a praying of thanks, there is a praying of sacrifice, and there is the praying of Rachel. Okay, there is also a prayer of Rachel, which is waiting for salvation, waiting for redemption. So different kinds of prayers that we can understand from the different stories, the different kinds of stories that we're telling. But more than that, if we compare the haftarah of Hannah of the first day to the haftarah of Rachel of the second day, there are a few differences. One is, this is a private story, this is a more national story, but the most important difference is the spiritual world that we're talking about. In the story of Hannah, as one of you said before, Hannah is a very powerful religious, spiritual character, that she did things that made her worthy of God answering to her prayer. There's a lot of, her prayer is very powerful. She's promising things. She's talking about herself. She's threatening, according to Chazal. That's why her prayer is so important and becomes halacha of tefillah. She's worthy. In the haftarah of Yirmiyahu, of Jeremiah, as we read, people are not worthy. People are poor. People, we need to help them. God needs to help them. The redemption will come not because they're worthy, but because they need it. Because you need to pity them. Because they can't help themselves. Because they're a nation that went out of war and they need help. They need peace. So it's not because of tshuva. It's not because of their good deeds. It's because God wants to help them. Why are they being redeemed? It's because they're the children of God, as you said before. It's not only us that learning from this situation, from these stories, personal stories of the different characters. It's God that is supposed to learn from it. It's God that's supposed to be merciful. Kirachem aval banim. It's God, if we ask ourselves, the cosmocentric approach is not here at all. It's in Hayom Harat Olam, but it's taking the idea of Harai's pregnancy, not as the world was created. The anthropocentric approach is here very strongly. We're talking about people and about the place of people and the emotions of people. If we're looking also for the more national, for more the historical approach of the story of Am Yisrael, we can find it in Jeremiah as we see it as Rachel is Tzion and representing the whole nation, the whole people. So we can find it a little. But what's strong here? In the choice of the sages, what to read, what will be the main story that will stand in the middle, in the center of Rosh Hashanah, both days, what we will read and identify with. This is the intimate, personal stories that will help us be in the right mood to ask for forgiveness. We can see that God, I'm not going to open again the psukim, but we can see that God says, for I am ever a father to Israel. Ephraim is my firstborn. Ephraim is Israel. Okay, Ephraim is my firstborn. You are my children. You are not my slaves. You are my children. And my children, I can help because they're worthy, or I can help because I'm merciful and I love them. And he's taking care of Am Yisrael because they're his children. Ephraim is a dear son to me, a child that is dandled. Haben yakir li Ephraim. Okay, God feeling mercy for his children, which is why we tell him, we are your children. Father and mother are supposed to love their children. Remember it. Okay, if you forgot for a minute, look how Sarah wanted children. Look how Hannah wanted children. Look how Rachel is crying about her children. So the first haftarah of the first day is telling us what are the good deeds. This we learn from Hannah. But the haftarah of the second day is telling us, okay, is giving us condolences and telling us that even without these deeds, God will be merciful for us because we are his children. And because this makes us worthy, even if we are innocent or we are to blame. So this is, I think, a very interesting explanation to see why, or two explanations, one, the atmosphere, and the other one, God as a father, as a parent, that why we read these Kriyot and Haftarot in Rosh Hashanah.